8 seconds, that's all it takes to unsettle the human soul. Imagine a man who never blinked when staring at a corpse, who could hear your heartbeat from across the room, who never smiled, yet convinced entire towns to follow him. His name was Ezekiel Drummond, and in 1824, America tried to bury his story. The records speak of a brilliant young man born in Virginia, a boy raised in prayer, scripture, and silence. But behind his blackened eyes was something more ancient than cruelty, something no medical journal dared to define. He was not merely a criminal, he was not merely a madman, he was the wound in the human psyche given flesh. And the most terrifying part, science still cannot explain him. Ezekiel Drummond's family belonged to a sect older than the nation itself, not Puritan, not Baptist, something older, imported from forgotten valleys of Europe. His childhood was marked by silence, no laughter, no play, no songs. The Drummonds raised their son in a strict doctrine of watching. He was instructed to sit for hours, motionless, staring at walls, animals, even corpses of livestock. It was a form of training to remove empathy, to weaken the bond between feeling and flesh. Neighbors whispered. They said he never cried, not even as a baby. They said his mother caught him staring at her while she slept, his small body rigid, his breathing slow, as if rehearsing death. The town dismissed it as eccentricity, but the older Ezekiel grew, the colder the house became. People said the air itself seemed to shiver when he entered a room, and by age 12, the first disappearance occurred. The year was 1812. A girl named Mary Ellen Caldwell vanished on her way to the schoolhouse. She was only 9. The community searched fields, barns, rivers. Nothing. But one farmer told a story he swore he'd never forget. He had passed Ezekiel that morning, standing by the well, his hands clasped neatly behind his back. And Ezekiel had smiled. Not a full smile, but a tightening of the mouth. That night, Mary Ellen's bonnet was found hanging on the Drummond family's fence. The sheriff questioned them. Ezekiel said nothing. He simply stared at the man until the sheriff forgot what he was asking. Records claim he became strangely confused, unable to hold his thoughts. No charges were ever filed. But the whispers began. In 1820, at age 18, Ezekiel was sent to a seminary in Richmond. His family claimed he was destined to be a preacher. But what happened there remains one of the strangest academic scandals in American history. Students said Ezekiel never slept. His roommates described the sound of whispering in the dark, though no one else was in the room. Professors found him in the library at all hours, reading texts not assigned, books in Latin, Greek, even fragments of esoteric European manuscripts that were supposed to have been locked away. One professor later confessed in a sealed letter he had a gift for opening books to the exact page of horror, always the passage about the slaughter of innocents, the sacrifice of blood, the cleansing fire, as though the words were calling to him. Then, students began to vanish. His name was Nathaniel Croft, a gentle young man training for ministry. One morning his bed was found neatly made, his belongings untouched, but Nathaniel was gone. Some claimed Ezekiel had been the last to speak with him, walking the corridors after midnight. Others claimed to hear scratching from beneath the floorboards of the dormitory. When the faculty demanded answers, Ezekiel replied only, "Not everyone deserves salvation." Nathaniel's body was never recovered. But scraps of cloth, his seminary robe, were later found inside the chapel crypt. The seminary quietly expelled Ezekiel. No records of the expulsion exist today, save a torn note in the archives. Do not admit Drummond. His eyes are not his own. When Ezekiel returned home, his family welcomed him as though nothing had happened. The town, however, recoiled. People crossed the street when he passed. Mothers pulled their children indoors. It was then he began to preach, not officially, not with any church's sanction. He stood in barns, in fields, on riverbanks. His words were low, steady, hypnotic. He did not speak of salvation or grace. He spoke of purity, of shedding the mask of humanity, to return to what he called the first hunger. And people listened. By 1822, he had gathered a circle of 20 followers. They were farmers, widows, even children. They met at night. No hymns, no candles, only silence, and then the sound of digging. Because Ezekiel had found a field he called the hollow ground, At the edge of town, beneath the bent trees and split rocks, there was a field no farmer ever claimed. Locals called it the hollow ground. Soil there never grew crops. The earth smelled of rust and ash. It was here that Ezekiel led his circle. By lantern light they dug trenches, long, shallow graves with no purpose. He told them this was practice, that the world would soon peel away, and only those who prepared the ground would survive. One night, a passerby claimed to hear them humming, not hymns, but a droning sound low and metallic, like bees caught inside a jar. Soon, dogs and livestock began vanishing from nearby farms. Then children. The hollow ground became a place no one dared approach. Yet every morning, new dirt mounds appeared, as if something beneath the earth was pushing upward. Between 1822 and 1824, the town orphanage reported 6 missing children. No forced entry, no broken locks, beds simply left cold. The matron confessed that the children had become strangely drawn to Ezekiel in the days before they vanished. He would stand outside the orphanage fence, motionless, until someone noticed. And yet no authority dared act. The sheriff himself had begun attending Ezekiel's sermons. Local clergy, once furious, fell strangely silent. Parents whispered that Ezekiel had a way of splitting the will, that once you met his gaze, you could never again fully resist him. In later psychiatric notes, a doctor who briefly interviewed Ezekiel described the sensation as standing at the edge of a vast, dark ocean, hearing waves you cannot see, knowing something is moving beneath them. The breaking point came on a stormy night in April 1824. A farmer awoke to screams near the hollow ground. When he rushed there with a lantern, he found Ezekiel and his followers standing in the rain, hands stained with something thicker than mud. The earth itself looked wrong, reddish, wet, steaming as if alive. He claimed to see small, pale limbs protruding from the soil before Ezekiel calmly pressed them back into the ground with his bare hands. When the farmer tried to flee, Ezekiel spoke a single word. The man collapsed. He could not remember how long he lay there. When he awoke, dawn had come and the field was smooth, undisturbed. He told no one. For years, finally, local ministers attempted to intervene. They summoned Ezekiel, demanding he renounce his gatherings and return to Scripture. He arrived at the meeting dressed in black, his eyes unreadable. When questioned, he asked the ministers a riddle. If God made man and man made war, what then does war make? The men tried to pray aloud, but their voices faltered. One later confessed that Ezekiel's presence stole the air from the room. Within weeks, 2 of those ministers were found dead in their homes, no marks of struggle, their faces frozen in expressions of terror, as though they had seen something standing in the dark. The church abandoned the case. Silence spread like infection. In late 1824, a physician named Dr. Horace Bell attempted to study Ezekiel. He wrote extensively about the encounter, though most of his notes were suppressed by his family. Bell described Ezekiel's pulse as impossible, sometimes absent, sometimes so rapid it blurred his instruments. His pupils did not contract under light. His body temperature was unnaturally cold, yet he sweated profusely when questioned about Scripture. When Bell asked if he felt remorse for the children, Ezekiel replied, "They were never yours. They were waiting." Bell's final entry ends abruptly. He looked at me and I understood something I must never repeat. My own children are not safe. None are safe. Days later, Bell resigned and left the county. His descendants refused to discuss the matter for generations. The town finally attempted to arrest Ezekiel in October 1824. But when the trial began, something impossible happened. Witnesses called to testify lost their voices mid-sentence. Jurors grew nauseous and fainted in the courtroom. Even the judge collapsed, trembling. The trial was abandoned. Ezekiel walked free. But records show the town council met in secret that very night. No minutes exist, only a single unsigned document. We cannot jail him. We cannot try him. He must be erased. Weeks later, Ezekiel Drummond vanished. His home was found empty, his belongings untouched. His followers scattered, some leaving the county, others institutionalized. Some claimed the council paid men to bury him alive in the hollow ground. Others swore he walked into the river one night and simply never resurfaced. But strangest of all, farmers kept seeing him, standing at the edge of their fields, always still, always watching. The disappearances stopped, but the silence in the town deepened, like a wound that never healed. For decades, official records of Ezekiel Drummond were sealed. Birth certificates, seminary papers, even church records vanished from archives. It was as though someone, or something, wanted his existence erased. Yet fragments remained, letters from grieving parents, sermon notes describing the boy with the cold voice, and sketches drawn by children of a tall figure with hollow eyes. Historians who stumble across these fragments all report the same thing: dreams. Dreams of standing in a red field, unable to move, while something shifts beneath the soil. By the late 19th century, descendants of Ezekiel's followers began showing strange patterns. Children born without empathy, families plagued by disappearances, entire bloodlines unlucky in ways that defied reason. Doctors studying these families spoke of interrupted humanity, as if something had entered their lineage and refused to leave. One chilling detail: many of these descendants would hum unconsciously a low droning tune, the same sound once heard at the hollow ground. In 1892, long after Ezekiel's disappearance, the town orphanage mysteriously burned to the ground. No cause was ever proven. Witnesses claimed to see children standing calmly in the windows as the flames consumed them, unmoving, unafraid. When the ashes cooled, among the rubble was found a single object, a blackened sermon page written in Ezekiel's hand. It read, "Fire does not destroy the seed, it only clears the soil." By the early 20th century, psychiatrists attempted to study cases resembling Ezekiel's. They used words like psychopathy, dissociation, antisocial personality disorder. But Ezekiel had defied all these labels. One doctor concluded he was not a man without conscience. He was a man with something else in its place. Some suggested his family's sect had practiced rituals to remove empathy, to strip away the barriers between human thought and something more primal. But if that were true, what exactly had filled the void? In 1923, a group of children playing outside the town stumbled onto the hollow ground. They dug into the dirt and uncovered small, skeletal remains. Authorities intervened quickly, sealing the site. Yet locals whispered the bones were not all human. Some were smaller, malformed, bent in unnatural ways. The ground was covered over, fenced off, but still at night, people swore they could hear that low droning hum. Declassified records in the 1940s revealed something chilling. Ezekiel Drummond's name appeared in internal memoranda of early American psychiatric institutions. He was listed not as a patient, but as a case study, a phenomenon they could not categorize. One note read, "Subject seems less an individual than a recurring pattern. He appears when empathy breaks. He disappears when silence is enforced," meaning Ezekiel was not alone. He was one of many. Today, Ezekiel Drummond is a ghost in American history. His name erased, his story untold. But fragments remain, scattered like bones across archives and whispered family histories. What terrifies historians most is not what he did, but what he represented, the possibility that beneath the thin skin of civilization lies a hunger older than reason itself. Ezekiel did not vanish. He waits, buried in the hollow ground or in the minds of those who cannot explain him. And when the soil splits again, when silence falls, he will rise,